How is everyone doing? I'm Nini FC, this is Blue Line CV. Welcome to a different video for today. I decided to do a player ratings video because, I watched this game about 2.5 times. And like some of these shocking performances I saw in yesterday's game, from players that I'm not even expecting to see performances like this from. It's quite shocking, you guys, so I hope you enjoy something different. You know what I'm about to say though, smash that like button, help me get more than 500 likes for today's video, and press the bell notification button as well to stay tuned to all things Blue Line CV. Now, just a quick introduction before I get straight into things, I want to provide some context in my player ratings. Basically, let's be serious, we effectively lost the game once it was 3-4-0 in the first 25 minutes of the game. So when the 5th goal was conceded and the 6th goal, it's not really as important because, naturally players' motivations are going to be down. You know that you've lost the game, you're just waiting for it to end. So for example, if the players made a mistake for the 5th or 6th goal, I'm not going to be so harsh because, the context of the game is completely different. But anyway, getting straight into the player ratings, starting with Kepa and goal. And Kepa was very interesting yesterday. I'm going to break it down goal by goal. Could he have done better for the first goal? In my opinion, I'd expect any player to score from that situation, and I really think that you're going to miss a golden opportunity to score if you're not burying a chance like that, so I'm not really going to criticise Kepa for that. When it comes to the second goal, could Kepa have done better? Now, it was a world-class strike from outside the box from aguero. Now, and Kepa did get fingertips of that shot, but it was such a perfect strike. The trajectory of the ball was amazing. I think Kepa did really well just to even touch it. So obviously when it comes to the second goal, I'm not going to be too hard on the guy. Could he have done better for the third goal? Of course, another situation where it wasn't his fault. Now, when it comes to the 4th goal, he does get close to saving that shot, but when you see it from multiple angles, Kepa really should have prevented that goal from going in. Yeah, it was a good strike, it was a good piece of play, but honestly Kepa should have saved that, and deep down he would be quite frustrated for not saving that. When it comes to the 5th goal, again around that time, no one really cares, the motivation levels aren't the same, and it's a penalty, so I'm not going to hold it against him for not really being properly aware to save that. And for the 6th goal, it's more or less the same, similar to the first goal they scored, where I'd expect a player to bury it in from that opportunity. Now, throughout the game, Man City did test us with a few shots. To be honest, they all went straight at Kepa, and he was quite good at saving those shots. He was very aware. So my player rating for Kepa yesterday is going to be a 7 out of 10. Now, moving straight onto the defense, starting with Rudiger. Now, when it comes to Rudiger, yes, I'm going to give him positives for making some very good 50-50 tackles. There was an opportunity where he really shrugged off aguero on the ball, and a few times he made some nice sliding interceptions, but as I always say, defending's not just about winning 50-50s, you have to look at how Rudiger does aerially up against an opposition player. You have to look at his positional awareness, and too often with Rudiger, he's caught way too high up. When he pushes wide, I do get a bit nervous, and you'd think, a player that used to play as a fullback, you think they'd understand that role a bit better, but a lot of times when he pushes up, he never gets back in position in time, and sometimes he can make defending against counterattacks pretty hard. Now, yes, there is context to this, and that's the fact that, our defense is going to get dragged apart once teams beat our forwards and our midfield players as well, but still, I think when it comes to positional awareness, it's still not at a very high level in my opinion. I'm going to be giving Rudiger a 6 out of 10. Moving straight on to David Luiz. And again, it was pretty similar with Rudiger where they weren't really at fault for any of the goals, and they did quite well at defending certain moments in the game. But David Luiz, one thing in particular, especially in that first half, he was really trying to start a lot of attacks from deep. A lot of times he was playing those passes between the lines. He found Eden Hazard in the hole tons and tons of times, and he was really trying to help the attack by constantly spraying accurate long balls out wide. Again, when it comes to him and Rudiger, I'm not going to be too harsh with the guys because when it gets to 4-0 down, the game's over. So it doesn't really matter how they defend the 5th and the 6th goals because, let's be serious, the motivations aren't going to be the same. I'm scoring David Luiz a 6 out of 10. Now moving on to the right back, Azpilicueta. You guys, I'm sorry. It was the worst ever performance Azpi has put in a Chelsea shirt. He was awful. Now, I'm saying this because I watched the game 2.5 times up to the first half, and I didn't realise it's the first time I was watching because it's Azpi. You don't really notice these things. Yeah, I saw Sterling get past him a few times, but when I watched the game again for a second time, it was awful. Constantly out of position. Yes, I know that Pedro wasn't helping him as much, but he was constantly just moving out, getting beaten out wide. People were beating him out wide. They were cutting inside and beating him. Balls and behind constantly throughout the game. Aspie was awful. And for him to give away the penalty really summed up his game. I'm sorry you guys, I'm going to be giving Azpilicueta a 2 out of 10. Now moving on to Alonso. Again, oh my god, he doesn't help the left hand side, and I share everyone's frustrations. I want to see Emerson starting. Yeah, he was poor against Bournemouth, but I'd rather see what Emerson can do with a few games under his belt, because Alonso's been getting tons and tons of opportunities for what? He's provided nothing. He was awful for the first goal, and in that sense, it's going to be harsh, but I kind of feel like he cost us the game from that moment, because he really set the precedent for, you know, concentration levels. I mean, to not tell Hazard or Barkley to move out wide, why are you turning your back against the play? It makes no sense. It's schoolboy. It's constantly schoolboy from Alonso. Not only that, he provides nothing going forward. Every time he tried to play a 1-2 with Hazard, it never came off. His crosses were dangerous at times, but as usual, constantly losing possession of the ball. He was awful, but he wasn't as bad as Azpilicueta. I'm going to be giving Alonso a 4 out of 10. Now moving on to the midfield players, starting with N'Golo Kante, and it was a pretty interesting game. Now there were a few times where Kante was caught ball watching, and that was most evident when Man City scored the 4th goal. Now Aguero was in behind Kante. Kante didn't notice him once because he was caught way too high up, but at the same time, Kante was winning quite a lot of interceptions in Man City's half. He was helping us when it came to pressing the ball, and I think overall, N'Golo Kante gets a 6 out of 10. Now moving straight to Georgina. Now my analysis on him was pretty different. You know, when I first watched the game the first time, I thought that he was quite poor, but watching it again, I saw some more nuances in his game. Now, for me, the positives were, during that first half, him and Kante were very intense in midfield. You know, Jorginho, he knows how to play this role, he does his thing, and it's quite frustrating that some of the other players in the team aren't really complimenting him as much. Jorginho was pressing high at times, he was being aggressive when closing down players, but for me, Jorginho is going to lose some marks for some of the poor forward passes he was playing. So many times he attempted long passes that weren't accurate. A most evident example was the pass he made to Higuain right at the start of the game. It should be more accurate, and in those areas of the pitch, you just think about Cesc, and I still don't understand why we didn't really persuade him to stay. I don't get it, because Cesc could really be helping us a lot more now. For me, Jorginho is going to get a 5 out of 10. Moving on to the last midfield player, that's the number 8, Ross Barkley. Yes, he was definitely dross yesterday. Ridiculous backwards header, and it really just summed up Barkley and how he's finding this system, and he's struggling. If an opposition team isn't giving our midfield space and time on the ball, Barkley just can't really play this football. I feel like, and I say this all the time, I do sympathise, you know, to not play for a year, to move straight into playing for Chelsea where he really needed a season under his belt first. It's not going to help the player. But Ross Barkley, you know, his forward passes were poor. He can't find a 1-2 to save his life. And his pressing, the people think that he works hard, but yeah, a few times, you know, he does slide in and intercept a pass. But when it comes to 50-50 tackles where, you know, they're the type of tackles I want to see our midfield winning, I rarely see Barkley winning a 50-50. I don't see what he provides in the team. His passing is very safe. When it comes to anything closer towards the opposition goal, he can't find a pass. It really comes off. We all know the left-hand side is so crucial for a Sarri system. And when you have Alonso and Barkley with Hazard, it's not strong enough. It's not good enough. I'm going to be scoring Ross Barkley a 3 out of 10. Now moving on to the forwards, starting with Gonzalo Higuain, and he was one of the few rare positives from yesterday. Now, quite a lot of times he was isolated throughout the game, but you still saw those rare moments of quality from the player. For example, that backheel pass to Pedro, that was great, and I'll get onto Pedro later. He forced a great save from Edison with that half volley, but the criticism I have to give Higuain is that a lot of times he wasn't very intense with his pressing. You know, when I see teams like Man City, Spurs, Liverpool, look at the intensity of the players. They get tight, they're aggressive. I didn't see that from any of our front three. We backed off way too much, and I think that when you're playing in a pressing system, it starts from the striker. That's what Pep always tells us, pressing starts from your forward. Higuain wasn't showing that intensity, and I think because of that, I'm going to be scoring him a 6 out of 10. Moving on to Eden Hazard, and for me, Hazard was the best player for us yesterday. He was quite frustrating at times, but there was a lot of context to this. I mean, other players cost us the game. If they're 3-0 down against Man City, it's over. The chances of getting back ain't going to happen really. So naturally, Hazard was going to be a bit more individualistic, but he was trying to make things happen. He was trying to take the game to Man City, and that's commendable. That's what you want to see from our best player. And because of that, I do think that Hazard did fulfill his part of the deal. And speaking of the right-hand side, moving on to the final player, Pedro. You guys, I say it all the time, I think Pedro is in decline. He's not as good as he used to be. That opportunity where Higuain backheeled it to him, the Pedro where we won the league under Conte, he's scoring that, he's burying that. Now this Pedro can't do that. He needs way more efforts on goal. Like the attacking contributions him and William provide to the team, it's kind of non-existent at this point. They're not doing enough. Not only that, Pedro kept constantly losing possession of the ball. He constantly kept overplaying. He wasn't helping out Azpilicueta enough. He wasn't getting tight or dropping deep enough. And for me, he was one of the worst players. I'm going to be scoring Pedro a 3 out of 10. Now quickly, before I do anything, of course, I do have to rate Sarri. Sarri, you know what? It's hard. I think that he could have helped by using guys like Emerson and Ruben instead of Ross and Alonso. But at the same time, I do have to realize if we use those players, does that mean that we would have had a chance at winning the game? I'm still not too sure in my opinion, because I think that Man City's tactics against us were very tight. And I think that with Emerson and Ruben, they're not going to be that great defensively. And I think that they would have still forced Hazard back regardless. Now, if this was a normal game, I'd be docking points against Sarri for his game management. But again, maybe he should have made a brave change once we were down 3-0, make a substitution. That could have been useful, that could have sent a message to the team. But again, this is me saying this from hindsight. By the time the second half started, we were already 4-0 down. So when it gets to that point, all Sarri's thinking about are the next games ahead and thinking about resting players. Could he be criticised for not playing a more defensive system? I think that's quite harsh as well, because of course, the first goals came from mistakes from players. 3 goals Man City scored came right from Chelsea players, from Barkley, from Alonso on that left hand side, out from Azpilicueta. They scored a wonder goal and they scored just 2 other clinical goals as well. So, I don't know. If Man City don't get that luck at the start of the game, the context could have been completely different, and maybe Sarri did have plans to change the game which he wasn't able to use because we already lost the game by the time the first half ended. And because of this, you guys, I'm going to be scoring Sarri a 6 out of 10, and to be honest, I feel like I am being objective. But you guys, that's going to be an end for today's video. Please like, comment and subscribe. You guys, I'm going to keep it moving. Thank you for watching. I'm NiniFC. This is Blue Line CV. Signing out.